Hey, welcome. My name is Adam, and in this video, we're going to be talking about a very interesting and potentially life-saving subject, which is the idea of neurodivergence, which is the understanding that human beings are born with different kinds of brains that have different strengths and weaknesses, and we should celebrate and honor these strengths and weaknesses instead of trying to fit everyone into the same box. And we're also going to talk about how symptoms such as ADHD, autism, bipolar, PTSD, OCD, dyslexia, schizophrenia, and dyscalculia, according to my research, are actually not signs of neurodivergence, but they are disorders or disabilities that have a specific cause, which we're going to talk about. And they also have a specific cure as well, which we're going to talk about as well. So I know this sounds crazy. So who am I and how am I claiming this? Hello, my name is Adam. I'm an independent researcher who has devoted the last 8 years of my life to reading hundreds of books and listening to thousands of hours of podcasts and audiobooks. My goal is to study reality from as many different lenses and angles as possible. So I've looked into a lot of science, biology, physics, quantum physics, philosophy of science, epistemology, metaphysics, spirituality of all different kinds, from Islam, Buddhism, Christianity. I've studied a lot of economics, politics, health and diet, business, marketing, dating and relationships, money management, personal development, a lot of self-help stuff, life coaching. I see myself as a generalist and I study all day. This is what I've been doing for the last 8 years. I've read hundreds of books. And according to my research findings, which have brought me into many interesting places in my life, I have discovered beyond the shadow of a doubt that symptoms such as ADHD, autism, bipolar, PTSD, OCD, dyslexia, schizophrenia, dyscalculia, and many other neurological disorders are not understood by the current modern scientific paradigm. And you would know this if you have any of these disorders. The explanation for them is just that you were born with it and we don't really know why. There's a chemical imbalance or there's something wrong with your brain. What I've discovered through my research is that actually there's another cause of these disorders. And yeah, I understand. It's a controversial topic. I get it. Okay, so the only thing I'm asking is just that you listen with an open mind. I'm going to do my best to present a very good quality case for why this is true. I promise you this is not going to be a waste of time. This could potentially change your entire life. I'm very convinced, okay? I never like to say 100% because there's always room for error, but I am very, very convinced, but beyond the shadow of a doubt, that if you are suffering from any of these symptoms, then the stuff I'm going to share with you could be very empowering for you. And even the protocols that I'm going to be sharing with you could actually help you to heal and reverse these symptoms, which is way beyond the current modern scientific paradigm. All right? So before we actually get into the main cause of these things, we just need to talk a little bit about the current limitations of modern science. I'm going to try not to bore you, but it's very important that we talk about this. It's kind of like the elephant in the room, okay? So one of the benefits of listening to someone like me, for example, who has invested over 8 years studying deeply the philosophy of how do we actually know what's true, the philosophy of scientific revolutions, understanding the entire history of science, the entire history of societal evolution, developmental psychology, even certain like personality types. Like I do tons of research into psychology, which is why I love this idea of neurodivergence, because I found that it is absolutely true from my deep research into the Myers-Briggs type system, which is not pseudoscience, but has actually been verified by the YouTube channel Objective Personality by two great researchers, Dave and Shan, who've done tons of research and studying gigantic sample sizes, doing type work on thousands of people, and they've got it down to an actual repeatable science where they can get the same type for each person. So like if you're an ENFP or an INFJ or ENTP, this stuff actually exists, and I'll have to make a whole separate video about it. But we see that human beings definitely have different brains, different ways of processing information, different strengths and weaknesses, different ways of thinking, different ways of relating to their own emotions, to other people's emotions, relating to logic and math. People process information differently, and this is amazing. This is something that should be celebrated because it's like the intelligent design of the universe. It's like in an ant colony, for example. Each ant has its own specific role in the ant colony. The same is true for humans. We're all intelligently designed to have different strengths and weaknesses because of this like universal balance, which is asymmetrical, which is very beautiful. All right. So throughout my research, I've done lots of study into the philosophy of science, and recently I've done lots and lots of research into medical science and the influence that pharmaceutical industries have on current scientific research, and even nutritional advice and all of this, even psychology. What I've discovered, unfortunately, is that a lot of our modern cutting edge, quote unquote cutting edge scientific research is still very in the dark about what really causes these things. And you might say, well, how do you know this? Well, what happened was I was doing research into diet, okay? I research everything because I'm interested in personal development and self-actualization. So I study all kinds of different things. So diet is one of the things that I study a lot. And I discovered this source called the medical medium. All right. So the medical medium is a person who gives alternative healing advice that is based on fruits and vegetables and juices, and it's very intelligent, and it's specifically designed to help people reverse and heal all sorts of chronic illnesses such as eczema, which is what I struggled with a lot. And I would get rashes all over my body. I had this since I was 1 year old. The doctors told me that we don't know what's wrong with you, but here's a cream, and come refill it every couple months. And, we don't know why you have eczema. I'm sorry, but here's a cream. All right. That had mixed results. It wasn't until I discovered Anthony William and I started doing his juice cleanse protocols like lemon water, celery juice, and the heavy metal detox smoothie, which we'll talk about later in the video. He was saying that the cause of eczema actually is heavy metals that are lodged in the liver, deeply in the liver tissues, that can actually be passed down from the mom to the kids. So my mom and her mom and her mom, there's this long chain of toxic metals. Like mercury has been around for over 1,000, it could be even like 2,000 years. And then there's other metals like lead, copper, and then more recent ones like aluminum. These things, when they get absorbed through all sources like burned exhaust fumes, like that lawnmower outside, which I'm going to go close the window, from cars and jets, pesticide runoff that people spraying their gardens or even in the air. There's lots of sources of pollutants. There's all kinds of fake chemicals, like fake fragrances that you spray on your clothes, you use on your skin. that you spray in the air. So there's a lot of chemicals in the air, in the environment. There's also heavy metals in the water. There's heavy metals in the food, in the air. Like I said, this bioaccumulates in your parents, right, and their parents, and then this gets passed down through the generations, because when your mom has you in her womb, you're sharing fluids, right? So if your mom has a certain chemical imbalance or a certain amount of toxic heavy metals, even your dad as well, from the sperm as well, and the fluids, when these mix, okay, and you're just an embryo, you're a zygote, this can cause you to develop in a way where heavy metals are lodged in certain places in your body, and they cause all sorts of chronic illnesses when you're very young. You could be born with a disability or a disease that there's really no reason why you would have that, and the only explanation that modern medical science has for this is, well, it's probably genetic. We don't know. You're born broken. So millions of people in our culture nowadays are born broken. We all have ADHD, severe allergies, skin rashes, chronic depression, autism, OCD, dyslexia, and these kinds of things, which we are going to talk about more. We're all born broken, apparently, according to modern medical science, and this is not a very good explanation. It's actually a cop-out, okay? That's not how it works. So Anthony William, the way he knows his information, because I understand the paradigm is like, how do we know anything unless science got it, right? Isn't that the only way we know things, which is through like modern mainstream science? And that's why I invested 5 to 8 years deeply studying epistemology, the philosophy of science, and how things are known. So it turns out there's actually many different avenues for a human being to know what's actually true in reality. That doesn't always have to be double-blind study checked in a scientific laboratory. You need to understand that the scientific method is one method of discovering truth. It's a great method for building technologies and inventing certain surgeries, medicines, and all sorts of things. It works, discovering physics, launching rockets to the moon. Amazing, an excellent method, okay? However, science does have its limitations. One of the main limitations is that science is not immune to corporate interest, like lobbying. Like the main things that are studied by science, especially in the field of nutrition, are things that have some kind of profit incentive for pharmaceutical companies, or even meat companies, dairy companies, egg companies, whoever's trying to sell a product. That's where millions of dollars of scientific research funding goes into: hiring lab technicians, renting labs, doing gigantic sample size surveys, and all of this kind of stuff that costs millions of dollars. Science is not immune to corruption, corporate interest, bias, and it's also not immune to certain phenomena, like epistemological phenomena, like paradigm lock. So science can get locked into a certain way of thinking that then takes many, many years, decades, to loosen up the assumptions that we've made. And this has been happening for thousands of years. This isn't like a recent thing. You can study the history of scientific revolutions. Like, for example, in Galileo's time, everyone thought that the universe revolved around the Earth. But then through Galileo's findings, he invented a new method, science, right? A new method of discovering the truth, which wasn't called science back then. It was actually called witchcraft or devilry. And just looking to see what's there, that was not recognized as a valid way to discover the truth. So Galileo was demonized and exiled. And it wasn't until way later on did we accept that actually the universe revolved around the sun, the solar system revolved around the sun, and the Earth was actually revolving around the star. This was not believed to be true. All right, so this kind of same quality of like when someone brings cutting edge information to science, there's always a very difficult, slow time for it to like be adopted. All right, the same was true for the guy who invented hand washing in the 1700s. The same is true when Einstein discovered the general theory of relativity. He was called a Jew, like they were just like so anti-Semitic. He was called a pseudoscientist and all this. And his ideas weren't accepted for many years. There was a lot of resistance to the quantum revolution. So this is just the way science is. It is very slow to evolve, and that's all right. That's just how the system works, all right? The thing is, when it comes to your health, right? When it comes to being born with eczema or being born with autism or ADHD or PTSD or OCD or dyslexia or schizophrenia, especially if it's very severe. Now, of course, when it's very mild, it's kind of easy to just sort of live with it and just to kind of say, oh, I'm neurodivergent. I was born this way, and this is just how I'm meant to be. I'm supposed to have ADHD. It's part of just the diversity of humanity. Like, for example, in the book, the Percy Jackson and the Olympians, they said that Percy was born with dyslexia and ADHD because actually he was the son of a Greek god, and he has Greek warrior in his veins, and he was designed to like fight on the battlefield. That's why he has that ADHD, so he has those like instincts. Or even like dyslexia was because he was actually designed to read ancient Greek, not English, right? So that's a fictional example of what I'm explaining here, this idea that like humans are supposed to be born with like these problems because that's just like their evolutionary advantage, or that's just like their uniqueness. All right. Now, again, I already mentioned humans definitely do have unique qualities and different brain wiring and different strengths and weaknesses. I've studied like dozens of different personality type systems. Yeah, definitely that's a fact. And I use that in my coaching and stuff to help people discover their life purpose and to be their authentic selves and all of this. This is great. But when it comes to someone who is born with severe autism, for example, where, you know, God bless the parents, right? I remember when I was young, there was a boy at my school who had severe autism. He was walking around all day making noises, doing kind of these weird hand motions. He wouldn't listen at all. You couldn't, sometimes he would, cause trouble, break things. He would throw temper tantrums. I just felt like he was always in pain. Causing suffering to the teachers, the parents. God bless the mom. She must have, how many long nights she must have stayed up dealing with this. How many times he must have, had, I'm sorry, like to say, but, he must have like pooped his pants like at the wrong time, or refused to eat food, or almost choked, or this or that. So like in these severe cases, you can't say that like the human was supposed to be born that way for some like magical hidden reason. All right, it's a sickness. You can tell that. I'm not saying it's a sickness in the sense that like there's something wrong, like you're a bad person and you deserve to be like ostracized from society and put in an insane asylum. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we can't just put on this lens of like toxic positivity where we just think that like severe illness is like severe bipolar disorder, like where you wake up in the morning and for 5 days straight you're severely depressed and you can't even get out of bed for 5 days, and you want to kill yourself the entire time. That's not neurodivergence, okay? That's not like we're not celebrating your differences. This is like you're something not okay, and like I'm trying to help, okay? I found a very powerful source of advanced cutting edge information that is ahead of modern science. Now, how's that possible? So Anthony William, the medical medium, the source I'm talking about, when he was born, he heard a voice when he was like 4 years old. It was a voice whispering in his ear, telling him how to heal the sicknesses of his relatives, the people around him. His grandmother had lung cancer, and the voice whispered in his ear saying that she needs to drink celery juice. And so they did this with the family, and it actually helped reverse her cancer. So ever since he was very young, he heard this voice that was channeling into him extremely detailed and specific information about why people are sick, the root causes of people's sicknesses, and how to heal them using usually fruit and vegetable-based protocols, sometimes supplements, sometimes herbs, but they're usually natural protocols. He also talks about sleep and getting sunlight and this kind of stuff, reducing chemical exposure. This kind of stuff is all talked about by the medical medium. So by the time he was 14 years old, he opened up his own practice where hundreds of people would come to see him every single day. And he would just help like people from 8 a.m. in the morning to 12 at night, midnight. And he saw thousands, like probably tens of thousands of people, and he helped them with all kinds of chronic illnesses, right? So, and I mentioned a lot of them, like gut problems, brain fog, thyroid problems, skin problems like acne, eczema, bone problems like arthritis, inflammation, chronic weight gain, and just general dis-ease in humans. And he was helping for his entire life, and he's 64 now, so he's been doing this for 50 years. And you better believe he has some extremely insightful stories about why people are sick and how to heal them, and also why modern science isn't there yet and is struggling to get there, mainly due to a lot of corporate incentive, which I've talked about in other videos. Also, modern science has a materialistic and reductionistic bias. It's a paradigmatic bias, meaning that science is not open to alternative modes of knowing, like Anthony Williams' spiritual powers. So now, again, you still might be skeptical. I've heard Anthony Williams slandered. People call him a ghost whisperer or a pseudoscientist, because it's not cited in a scientific lab. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this. First of all, you need to understand that human beings, since we're talking about neurodiversity, let's actually apply it, okay? Some human beings actually have spiritual intuition or just psychic knowing, and it's just a power that they have. Some people, especially if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, I've studied this extremely deeply. On the Myers-Briggs spectrum, usually if you're an INFJ, okay, and I have to talk about this in another video for exactly why, but if you have the cognitive functions of an INFJ, you are highly likely to have some kind of spiritual intuitive power. It could be channeling, like my girlfriend who is an actual proper INFJ. That's not just typed from a website, self-tested, but it's actually typed from a person like me who fully understands the model very deeply. So if you're an INFJ, you probably have some kind of spiritual power like telepathy, knowing why people are sick, energy healing, speaking to ghosts or spirits or astral beings. And again, you might think this isn't real, but again, in the spirit of celebrating everyone's uniqueness and diversity and the relativism of reality, looking at reality from many diverse perspectives, we need to include these perspectives into our overall worldview. We need to understand that sometimes reality is mystical. And this is a thing that's been happening for thousands of years. There's thousands of mythological accounts of human beings having psychic powers of all kinds, like Jesus Christ, for example, healing people in the Bible. There's all kinds of Egyptian hieroglyphs of them doing healing rituals, energy healing. There's shamans from tribes all over the world: the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Polynesians, the Japanese and Chinese, the Norse, the Celtics, etc. All over the world, there is mythology and accounts of mystical phenomena in reality that have been scrubbed clean during the Enlightenment age in the 1600s, which is the Enlightenment, which I've spoken about in other videos, how the scientific influx of thought, of rational, objective thought, was a good thing and a bad thing in our history, because we learned how to look at reality objectively and not just be like Bible worshippers and just like believe in the Bible and just like be superstitious and not have any ground to our thoughts, right? So that was a problem pre the Enlightenment. But with that problem, we what we did is we just threw out all religious, mythological sounding things. Everything spiritual, we completely got rid of it. We demonized it. We threw the baby out with the bathwater, including all of the potentially beneficial parts of genuine spirituality or religion or psychic abilities, which really exist. We're talking about neurodivergence, right? I have a whole 2-hour video talking about the wide range of psychic abilities that people could potentially have. You can check that out, all right? So Anthony Williams, one of those people, and he channels extremely detailed and profound information about why the human is sick and how to get them better. So some of that information we're going to be exploring today, specifically about these disorders that are normally lumped in with just like a genetic problem, or you're just born neurodivergent. But I'm saying, no, you weren't born neurodivergent with autism. You are a unique, special human being with a unique mind and strengths and weaknesses, but having bipolar or PTSD or OCD, that's not neurodivergence. That's a sickness that has a cause and it also has a cure. All right? So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Before, I just want to see if there's any lingering doubts about this subject. And really what it comes down to at the end of the day, is that Anthony Williams' books have gotten amazing results for millions of people. And really what it comes down to at the end of the day is you got to buy one of his books yourself. About this topic specifically, I recommend Brain Saver. That's all about this topic. He has whole chapters about each one of these disabilities or disorders or diseases or whatever you want to call them. Dis-ease, it's not a bad thing. It just means you're not at ease. Your body is it's not easeful. There's a dis-ease. Okay, so I'm not saying it's like you're sick and you need help, this kind of stuff. But what I'm trying to say is that you got to read Anthony Williams' books yourself. You can read his articles on his blog. The books have the most depth of information. And until you actually buy one of his books and read it beginning to end with an open mind, you can't really come to a conclusion about the subject, because you need to kind of experience it for yourself, especially if you have some kind of chronic illness symptom, including addiction, depression, chronic anxiety, and brain fog, and a lot of things that I mentioned, thyroid problems, weight gain, this kind of stuff. Try out his protocols for 6 months. Try his diet for 6 months, and actually test it. And you might feel amazing in your life, and you might say, oh my God, this is like very advanced stuff. And the reason why it's advanced stuff is because channeling information exists, okay? I've read dozens of books that are actually channeled, like Conversations with God, like A Course in Miracles, like Enlightenment Through the Path of Kundalini. These are advanced perspectives, cutting edge perspectives that you could say are way ahead of our time, and they're channeled from spirit or from source or from God or from the source of intelligence with the intention to compassionately help humans live good lives, and in this case, to be healthy and to get the metals out of their brain, which is what we're going to talk about right now. So, what is the actual cause of ADHD, autism, bipolar, PTSD, OCD, dyslexia, schizophrenia, dyscalculia, and a whole host of neurological disorders? Now, I want to just lead with a lot of sensitivity and compassion. I want to understand that. I want you to understand that I realize that these can be life-destroying disabilities. Okay? They can destroy your life, and they can prevent you from having a regular job. They can prevent you from sticking to a schedule, from feeling your best, from being confident, from feeling good about yourself. It can ruin your relationships. They can destroy families. And just ruin your life, make you feel sad while all your friends are swimming in the pool. You have chronic anxiety, you're terrified of going in, or you have bipolar, you're stuck in bed, you can't even go out with your friends because your brain fog or your manic depression is kicking in. So these are life-destroying things, and I want to just acknowledge that there is sensitivity around this topic, which is why I'm trying to tread carefully with compassion while also telling you what you need to hear, okay? The truth. So to summarize what Anthony says in all of his podcasts and in all of his books, the reason why you're sick with these things, these neurological disorders like ADHD, autism, PTSD, OCD, dyslexia, and also like other chronic illnesses, the main reason why is number one, chemicals that have been bioaccumulating in your body, toxic heavy metals that have been bioaccumulating in your body, in this case specifically in your brain, and they've like mercury, aluminum, copper, nickel. Mercury is one of the worst. Little bits of it as you're developing as a child in your mother's womb, it gets in there. Okay, it gets passed down as you're breathing in toxic exhaust from living near a highway, or jets flying over your house every 10 minutes, or being exposed to fertilizers, pesticides, drinking tap water that's running through rusty pipes, using metal silverware and scraping out of metal pots at restaurants. All of this, it bioaccumulates in your body, eating fish that has high mercury and this kind of stuff. The metals get in your brain, all right? In our society, it's almost impossible not to get metals in your body and in your brain. What happens is specifically with high-fat diets, like lots of eggs, lots of meat, lots of cheese, even just like lots of nuts, like too many, like way too many, what this can contribute to the oxidation of these metals. Now, if you don't have a high-fat diet, sometimes for some people, the metals will oxidize earlier in their life than for other people. Some people, their metals will never oxidize and they won't have these symptoms. But when the metals oxidize in your brain, they start to basically rust, and then they corrode in your brain, okay? And then they start to bleed. They run. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be so graphic. But they bleed. The metals, when they corrode and they oxidize, they spread and they run through your brain in certain parts of the brain, depending on what type of metal and what type of part of the brain, that will determine what kind of mental, I was going to say ineptitude, but mental struggle that you have. It's ADHD or autism. It might be in one part of the brain, which we're going to talk about, like autism, for example. He's saying on his website here that autism is caused by toxic heavy metals, mercury and aluminum especially, settling in the cerebral midline canal, as well as other areas of the brain. In autism, large amounts and proportions of mercury are involved. In particular, heavy metals heavily dispersed in the speech, language, communication, movement, and motor control areas of the brain, in addition to the midline canal, are behind autism. All right. And then the variability of the autism severity, that is, the autism spectrum, is due to the variability in the quantity of metals in someone's brain, how much mercury is present, and exactly where in the brain those toxic heavy metals have deposited themselves. If you could examine the heavy metals in the brains of those who have bipolar disorder, you would begin to see why this disease manifests itself so differently in each individual. Heavy metals of all kinds, including copper, mercury, lead, and aluminum, find their way into the body either at conception, during pregnancy, at birth, or afterwards. People can also get heavy metals later in life from pesticides, which contain heavy metals, the metals in kitchenware, old copper pipes, and many other sources. On their own, these metals are poisons. What is worse is that they tend to oxidize, causing even worse problems such as toxic runoff that damages any tissue in its path and disrupts the path of electrical impulses. Sometimes the heavy metals oxidize quickly in people's brains. At other times, it takes a little bit longer for the metals to oxidize. Additionally, there's a factor of where the heavy metals have made a home in the brain. They could be in the frontal lobe, by the pituitary gland, in the cerebral midline canal, or scattered about. Toxic heavy metals are also a food for viruses and bacteria, a truth that medical science and research are not yet aware of. When viruses and bacteria eat toxic heavy metals, they excrete neurotoxins, which can worsen the condition of someone with bipolar or another condition caused by toxic heavy metals. All these factors, and more to come below, play a part in someone's neurological health and why no two people can have the exact same bipolar. All right. So he goes into lots of detail in this specific article on bipolar. I'll link that in the description. He talks about ADHD, which is a similar phenomenon, aluminum and mercury settling in the midline canal of the brain, preventing the left and right hemisphere from connecting properly, so the brain has to come up with other ways to connect, which is very roundabout and inefficient. Also, dyslexia is something related to the learning and the visual areas of the brain, and schizophrenia as well. All right. So the myth is that these symptoms come from hormone imbalances, chemical imbalances. You're just born with it. You're born broken. You're clearly sick. I don't like calling it neurodivergence because it's debilitating, especially in extreme cases. It's extremely debilitating, like I've described. So calling it neurodivergence is actually not very compassionate, because you can't just say, oh, you're meant to have severe autism where you can't even talk, right? Or you can't even walk properly, or you can't do anything really. You can't tell someone that they're meant to be born that way. And I've actually found an article called How I Reversed My Son's Autism by using Anthony Williams' heavy metal detox smoothie protocol, which uses specific foods that are designed to bind onto these heavy metals in your brain and help to get them out. Now, that's an interesting question, how the foods reach the brain. I think when the stomach digests them, a lot of the enzymes and phytochemicals and antioxidants from these specific foods that we're going to talk about in a second, they get into the bloodstream, and then they go into the brain, and then there's little bits of it that help to absorb these heavy metals and gently take them out of the brain tissues, which we're getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah, so a lot of these disorders as well can be set off by certain traumatic experiences. So like PTSD, for example, when you have a extremely traumatic experience, like your parents both die in a car accident and you're the only one that survives the accident, right? Like something horrendous like that. This is so stressful for the internal body systems. It causes massive amounts of adrenaline to be released from the adrenals, which normally your body can handle. But if you have these toxic heavy metal deposits that are like sitting dormant in your brain, it can activate them and it can cause them to oxidize. This adrenaline is very toxic for your body. Normally your body can handle it, but in addition to your brain also heating up massively, like when you get extremely angry, the metals in your brain can start to bleed even more or oxidize even more, or they can even sometimes fuse into alloys as well. Yes, the human brain can get hot enough. Yes, it can definitely get hot enough to fuse metals like mercury and aluminum that can be fused together into a mercury aluminum alloy in your brain. And this can set off something like PTSD, where for the rest of your life you have like chronic anxiety or flashbacks or shakes and inability to like nerve motor system impairment. The same is true for bipolar. Bipolar's been recognized as had to be related to traumatic events by mainstream science, but they absolutely have not discovered the metals in there. Now, why? Why hasn't science discovered the metals? This is a great, very interesting subject. Why hasn't science been looking for the metals? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I think it's related, again, to certain pharmaceutical influence. Companies, there's a lot of lobbying and pushback that prevents certain research from being done and actually focuses on the complete opposite research and promoting misinformation. Also, a lot of pharmaceuticals that exist, they're actually extremely toxic for your body and your brain. Some pharmaceuticals have heavy metals in them. So if it comes out that the cause of many illnesses, almost all chronic illnesses, are related to heavy metals in some way or viral activity, but usually these things are linked, that can be very problematic for the pharmaceutical industry's pockets, because a lot of their medicine won't be needed anymore, because all you got to do is gently take the metals out of the brain, and it will basically invalidate their entire billion-dollar industry. All right, so that's one factor. Not 100% sure why, though. I'm going to have to look more into that. So let's talk about gently taking heavy metals out of the brain in a specific, intelligent way. So there's many heavy metal detox protocols that use chlorella, for example, which Anthony Williams says is a terrible idea, because chlorella he likened it to like a nuclear bomb in your, or like a bomb in your brain, where it definitely dislodges heavy metals, but it doesn't bind onto them and hold them. And it can actually cause them to get lodged in other places, or it can grab onto it, hold it for a little bit, but then drop it somewhere else in your body. You could drop it in your kidneys or drop it in your heart and so forth. So the smoothie ingredients that he talks about in his heavy metal detox smoothie, which are wild blueberries. He uses frozen wild blueberries, not bilberries. If you live in Europe, you need to check the package. Make sure it's not bilberries, because in Europe specifically, there's like mismarketing where they pass off the bilberry as the blueberry. They're different berries. Try to get wild blueberries. If you can't get them, you can use powdered wild blueberries. These are different than conventional blueberries. They're a totally different food. The wild blueberries are extremely healing and have all sorts of ability to take heavy metals out of the body. Also, fresh cilantro, barley grass juice powder. Okay, that's not barley grass, it's barley grass juice powder. Spirulina, one small handful of Atlantic dulse, which is a seaweed that you can buy in certain health food stores, along with the spirulina and the barley grass juice powder. The smoothie also contains 2 ripe bananas and also a fresh squeezed orange. Those are more so for taste, and also the sugar helps to uptake it, but those are not necessary. The main 5 ingredients, he says these 5 ingredients specifically work together: dulse, cilantro, barley grass juice powder, spirulina, and wild blueberries. These 5 ingredients specifically work together to basically go on an Easter egg hunt in your body and find the heavy metals, not only in your brain, but even in your liver, your kidneys, your pancreas, your stomach, your large intestine, small intestine, etc. They can bind on to these metals and take them all the way out of your system. All right. So he likens it to like an Easter egg hunt when you have an Easter egg hunt with kids. This is something we do in North America where we hide little eggs that are filled with chocolate or candy, which is probably not going to help the heavy metals, but I'll do an Easter egg hunt with wild blueberries for my kids. We hide them in certain areas and then we just send all the kids to go find them, right? One kid might find a heavy metal in your pancreas, another kid might find a heavy metal in your brain. Right, so the dulse might find it in your kidneys, the cilantro might find it in your brain. So we got to use all 5 of them, ideally. He says you can use 4. If you can't use wild blueberries, use 4. Okay, and just use bilberries or whatever you got, or blackberries. If you can't find dulse, then use 3. Right, but you ideally want to use all 5 because that will give the best results. All right. Millions of people have used this heavy metal detox protocol. I've been using it for about a year. It's actually helped me to lessen my eczema, which is caused by toxic copper in the liver. My eczema symptoms have gone down significantly, and along with his other diet changes. So he says specifically you need to avoid eggs, eggs, pork specifically, dairy, wheat, canola oils, MSG, tuna, corn, and some other things that I talk about in other videos where I give a full overview of the diet. You can just check out that video over there that I recommend. So it's down below. So okay, so let's close up and let's wrap everything up, okay? So I've given you a specific protocol for how to detox heavy metals. Basically what you do, okay? So you wake up in the morning, and you brush your teeth, all right? Because there's all kinds of bacteria in your mouth. You don't want to bring it back down into your body, okay? So you brush your teeth. Then you have 500 milliliters of lemon water, okay? That helps your body to flush any toxins that were cleansed overnight. I've spoken about this in other videos, which is why I'm reluctant to explain it all again right here. I'll recommend in the description the morning cleanse. Also, the celery juice comes after the lemon water, okay? And that also helps to loosen the heavy metals up inside your body, and they can also help to decharge them so that some of them are electrically charged. The celery juice has electricity. You can actually, like, if you make celery juice and actually look at it, you can literally see it buzzing. You can feel it. There's there's electrolytes in it. There's all sodium cluster salts. These sodium cluster salts can help to neutralize the heavy metals electric charge. Okay, that can already help to restore brain function, and also they can help to heal damaged organ tissues because the sodium cluster salts they help to give your body the sodiums that it needs to help heal and produce the proteins that it needs to repair the damaged tissue that could have been damaged by oxidized heavy metals and also viral activity, which has been excreting neurotoxins into your brain, which are very problematic. All right. So then after that, you wait an hour after your celery juice. Then you can have your heavy metal detox smoothie, which the recipe's in the description, or you can eat the heavy metal detox ingredients separately. You can have the blueberries with oats. You can have a cup of cilantro later in the day. You can have some dulse mixed with some juice powder and some spirulina in another smoothie that you have later in the day. So you just got to get all 5 of them in you throughout the day. The smoothie is the most potent way to get all these ingredients in you and to detox the metals, but try to eat all 5 of these ingredients every day. I'm going to link Anthony Williams' live stream where he explains it better than me, because I'm just like the messenger. It's like broken telephone kind of. My job is to research hundreds of diverse perspectives, to have a deep foundational epistemological understanding of knowledge and what is true in reality. Of course, I make mistakes all the time. I am wrong about many things. And my problem actually is that I wait too long to bring you guys information because I'm obsessive about it being perfect. I'm always like needing more and more and more information for it to be finally perfect. But recently I've just been giving you the information, and so just keep in mind that I've done lots of checking, double checking, triple checking. My information is never complete, okay? I'm always learning more. I'm gonna go read the Brain Saver book after this, and maybe you should as well. So there's a lot to learn about life and reality, and that's what I'm interested in helping you with here. I'm also talking a lot about diet advice as well. This has been something that is extremely important because the foundation of your personal development, your psychological health and happiness, and your self-actualization, realizing your full potential as a human being here on planet Earth, requires you to be healthy and not to have heavy metals in your brain, not to have viruses in your body, not to have misinformation and fad diets that are actually making your symptoms worse. Okay, there's millions of people all over the world now that have chronic illness symptoms. If you don't have any yet, I'm sorry to say that just wait, because you will have them soon. We live in a very toxic society with all kinds of chemical pollutants in the air, in the water and food and soil, etc. Not to mention our diets are McDonald's and fried chicken and eggs that feed viruses, which I've talked about in other videos. So you're going to get sick eventually if you don't just learn how to eat healthy, which is primarily fruits and vegetables, and celery juice, which I've talked about in other videos. So you can check those out now. You can also subscribe and stay tuned for more videos like this. I just wanted to address some final doubts. Okay, so I understand that there's a lot of information out there. Okay, I understand your reality might feel like it's just a soup of perspectives and everyone is saying this guy's saying the carnivore, this guy's saying the vegan, this guy's saying the paleo, etc. Right? Everyone has different opinions and ideas about everything, and it's hard to prioritize what's what and who is true and who's right and who has more of the truth than other people. What do I believe is real? How does reality actually work? Okay, I don't want just a soup of opinions. I want to understand the natural order, the structure of existence, the patterns. When you study hundreds of diverse perspectives, which I'm going to be sharing with you more on this channel, I'm going to release a book list or just a video where I just kind of go through all my books and I give you book recommendations and this kind of stuff very soon. When you start to read these books and take a big picture view of reality where you study many different sources and you pull from hundreds of perspectives, then you start to see the overlapping patterns and principles of how existence is structured and how it works, how psychology is structured, how the mind is structured, how knowledge works, how science works, how spirituality works, how diet works, how relationships work, how money and business works. There's deep principles, foundational principles that are baked into the very structure of existence that you can discover for yourself. All right, and that's what I'm interested in guiding you towards here on this channel. It's not about just believing me or believing people. It's about discovering what reality is and how it works for yourself by taking this multi-perspectival approach and by grounding it in your own direct experience and testing for yourself. All right, so that's what I'm interested in helping you with. Subscribe for more videos like that if you're interested, and I'll see you in the next one.